Hi again. Um, to continue from what the last video was, I, in addition to talking to management, I also talked to volunteers and staff, everything like that, to try to figure out where this fear was coming from of wanting to, not wanting to say anything about the litter. Because if we all knew it was wrong, and I'm sorry to recap, obviously got fired for giving cats litter. They give them shredded newspaper. They're not using it. Sorry. Um, but I wanted to get to the bottom of this because that's just the type of person that I am. I wanted to figure out, like, what, why are people not, trying to change this? I think it's very important that we attempt, some type of resolution. And I'm always a huge fan of we can always talk this out. No matter what, we can always talk this out. And Joanne seems like a very nice, respectful person when you meet her. She's very, she is rarely, involved in a lot of goings on in the shelters, but when she is, she's, pretty nice. So I really honestly didn't think that things would turn out the way they did. But I'm gonna put the emails up on the screen that over the years volunteers had sent to management to talk about this issue because it's important to understand how much of an issue this really was and how much time and energy was spent in having management making people believe that it wasn't an issue. um and I mean, the reasons given for the shred only rule, which this is a huge thing, obviously, like, let's get, why is this happening? What is the goal of using this litter other than money? So I was thinking, obviously, it is just money, which, litter supplies can be expensive. But the reasons given were all different depending on who was answering the emails. Some talked about the health, like the dust from clay litters. They talked about it being easier to clean up, and cost was also mentioned on there. Was it feasible to get litter supplies, even though every other shelter does that? Um, but, the people in charge of these decisions refuse to talk to anybody about it. They always have their operating officers, HR people, volunteer coordinators, adoption managers. They would be the ones to communicate with the volunteers, and it created this atmosphere where these managers just hated the volunteers and hated anybody that complained about, the not the volunteer coordinator, but most people just absolutely could not stand the people that were trying to give, litter to people because they were causing issues. Um, but since it wasn't consistent, you weren't talking to somebody that had the actual, like, the direct answers. Um, there wasn't any satisfying dialogue, and eventually they would just stop responding to the emails. But it was offered many times for donors to fund litter supplies for years at a time, and that was turned down. They said it wasn't financial. World's Best Litter got in touch with them personally about their litter programs. It was turned down. They said, you know money was not the issue, and and they said, even the donors were like, okay, well then we'll fund something else. We'll even do the pellets, we'll do something. We'll do the proper paper litter because they do have like a yesterday's news. I don't think yesterday's news is being sold right now. I think it was discontinued, but they have other paper litters. And be like, we can get paper litter, just not newspaper. Newspaper's disgusting. But the answer was always no. And the bottom line was everyone was worried about these cats not getting the basic care, and no one wanted to address it. No one was willing to change this or have, or even, you know, the thought of even changing it just wasn't in, you know, discussion. And not only that, but management went out of their way to make sure these cats were not getting litter. And it's illogical, but also cruel. because we're talking about cats not being able to go to the bathroom. And, Joanne Zoll will give you this wonderful speech about how amazing Providence now versus when it was the Delaware County SPCA, how it's no kill, how they help so many animals. Um, but less euthanasia is that's a huge selling point, but obviously there's going to be less euthanasias than there was when it was the SPCA because, when you change a shelter from being open intake, meaning they have to take in every single animal that is surrendered to them, then you change it to a nonprofit that picks and chooses who they want to take and they can have cutoff points and they don't have to take that many. Yeah, euthanasias are going to be under control. They're going to be a lot less. It's common sense. And the term no kill is such bullshit, by the way. But um, yeah, she would congratulate herself for this, but really they just privatized and made it so that they're not helping the community as much. And it gets thrown on shelters like ACT in Philly that is so overwhelmed that they're doing euthanasias by the dozens probably every hour. Um, but when I wanted to talk to Joanne about this, when I wanted to start a dialogue, everyone advised me against it. They said that talking directly with Joanne or Dr. Kim would be pointless at best and harmful to my employment at worst. Um, and I knew that because I had seen it. I had seen people quit because they were getting targeted, they were getting, picked on, and retaliation was a huge thing. This is not an ideal situation for me to confront. I have severe anxiety. Even making this video right now is not making me feel great. But regardless, this is for the animals. We put all that bullshit aside. We're working here to save them. And, you know, Dr. Kim, when I talked to her, she was hostile towards me. I had to talk to HR about that. Um, and there was even witnesses to her being hostile towards me because they can get away with just about anything here. No one's ever faced any consequences. Um, but I always try to be respectful, polite. My goal was from the beginning was to keep my job, was to continue caring for these animals. And I didn't want to lose my job. I had many meetings with HR about what I had seen and what I was worried about because I wanted to prevent this from happening. I wasn't aiming to cause issues. I'm not the type of person that likes drama. I just want to work with animals and I just want to help them. I hate conflict. But, you know, when it was time for the meeting with Joanne, the HR rep would also be there. I tried to be as respectful and polite as possible, but I also had evidence of what things that were going on. I document everything. I make sure that I also consult, shelter, medicine, vets, all that kind of stuff. I'm always going to come prepared. And I was hoping that by being reasonable and just by appealing to her and approaching it in a way that was maybe she's doing this because she doesn't realize how bad it truly is. Um, but no, that's not what happened. Um, every excuse was used, and when I would combat that excuse, um, she just came up with a new one. It was just a ridiculous exercise in power and pettiness is all I can call it. And I really don't want to just label it as that. I don't want to be that person, but um I really wanted it to be more than that. I really wanted it to be financial. I wanted it to be like miscommunication, or I wanted it to be, you know, something that could explain why these people who apparently love animals would do this. But it was just a frustrating conversation. And the bottom line is she wasn't something that was going to change. End of story. Um, and after that, like I said in the last video, everything got worse after the meeting. Um, with so many of my coworkers quitting for the reasons that you can suspect, I was a lone person in the cat room, and litter monitors were all the time. They were constantly there. With the med teams not being able to, tend to, vet slips and stuff like that. I needed these cats to go to the bathroom. I needed them to be comfortable. They were supposed to be adoptable. They're not adoptable when they're sick like this. And keep in mind, I'm not the only one that recognizes this. They would go through admissions and they'd be there. People there recognize this as issues too. Even the medical people, anybody that could get away with giving them litter would. But it's just I was in the adoption room. It was harder for me to get rid of, and I mean, get away with. So, you know, other people could, but I couldn't. Um, and you know, it just when it became clear that I wanted to change things, um, it was, they were constantly on my ass. And at first it was just management, like it always was. But then Dr. Kim and Joanne actually came into the cat room one night and did a look around. They didn't talk to me or anything, but that's super unusual. They usually do not come into the cat room. Um, but then I was informed to dump all the boxes, like I said in the last video, and that's when I sent that email because it just seemed, first of all, they didn't talk to me. They didn't have a conversation with me where I could be like, hey, this is why this is happening. Um, they were obviously going out of their way to make sure that I was following these rules that were hurting the animals, and no amount of reasoning would matter. And you know, it was just these cats are suffering, and them and her dismissing me and saying it doesn't matter, and saying she's not changing, this, policy. It was just beyond frustrating and sad. Um, but I just I knew my employment was ending after my first write up. I didn't realize how soon it was going to end because literally that night I got written up again, or the next night. But yeah, I I don't care that I lost that job. I care that Joanne gets to mistreat animals and toss anyone aside that tries to change things. I'm angry that people in charge get to make these pointless decisions about defenseless creatures that we're supposed to be protecting, and they have no choice but to be there. And I'm angry that it's all being done for no reason. And I'm angry that in addition to this, there's so many other issues that point to Joanne treating this place like it is a puppy mill. It is just a, she really is just looking for money. And, everything is about just selling everything for the top dollar. I'm not going to come, I'm not going to talk about that in this video, but obviously this is not the only issue that this shelter had. This is what I dealt with personally, and this is what I have evidence for. Um, but this all comes down to you can't tell me what to do bullshit. And, Joanne's not your typical animal advocate. She had been a volunteer for SPCA and like a board member, but she was in consulting and legal stuff. That's what she went to school for. She's, a corporate person. She's not, your typical, like, if you meet with the director of Cecil County Animal Services or Faithful Friends, they're very involved. They know these animals. They love these animals. That's not the case here. Um, but we're supposed to be here to help these animals. And I just, we're not doing that. And if you're asking what about the board, because there is an actual board, series of board members, um, that is supposed to keep her in line and, she's supposed to answer to them as well. I'm wondering about that too. I wrote to the board president, never got anything back. She obviously ignored me. She is best friends with Joanne, so that's probably it. But they're very uninvolved. And, um, they're all very, very good friends with Joanne. And they're not there at the shelter ever. They believe everything that she says. But I did write to, the board president because I wanted her to know that you have to know something's up, right? Like it's not just me. Other people are quitting en masse. People that have been there for decades, people that have been there since it was the SPCA are quitting. You have to know something is wrong. Like you logically have to know something is up. And she hasn't run this place for that long. But in the time that she has run this place, it has gotten nothing but worse. And so it's heartbreaking. This continues to happen. And it's going to continue to happen until Joanne decides to retire or resign or die. And it's not right. And we see this in other shelters, but it's nothing but heartbreaking. These animals don't deserve that. Again, I'll talk about this in other videos, but this 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 should not continue to happen. And it's not, I don't care that I was fired. It is what it is. I raised hell, and that's, politely raised hell. But I you know, did, try to change things, and that's what happens. Um, Advocates often have these things happening to them, but these animals are still there and they're still suffering, and people are still quitting, and there's not a lot of people there to advocate for these animals anymore. And the people that are there are stressed, overworked, and depressed because they feel like they can never leave now, because they feel like they're the ones that are holding together this shelter. And those kind of attitudes are dangerous and are going to get people to shut down. So I'm going to leave that here. I really want to I really want to make more videos, talk more about this kind of stuff. Um, but I really want to take action. I really want something to happen, because this is not okay. It's not okay. And it should not continue to happen. So I would love to hear people's points of views on this. If anybody's ever dealt with this. But yeah, this is something very foreign to me. I've never worked at a shelter that has been this obsessed with making sure cats don't get what they need, when everything is there to make sure that they get what they need. So I will talk about this in later videos, but thank you so much for listening. Bye.